Well, hi, everybody. This is Mark Silverman. Thank you for joining me. We have a special, beautiful Constraint episode today. As I told you in the videos that I've been talking about before, that by making these videos, I've been able to connect with a bunch of people that some I know and love, like Jeff here, to talk about setbacks or things that have happened, constraints in their lives, things that have taken them a couple steps back and catapulted them forward. As you know, I've been giving you guys videos on how I'm dealing with my crutches and building my business and my 3 goals of signing 4 clients, getting in the best physical shape I possibly can while I'm on crutches, and deepening my spiritual self, basically sitting on the anthill with the itchiness and the pain of the foot and meditating. But Jeff was kind enough to come on and talk to us about something that he experienced that sent him way back, that actually changed his life forever. And Jeff, I really appreciate you coming and talking to us. Tell us a little bit about yourself so that the audience knows who you are.
Okay, thank you, Mark, for having me. I'm a life coach. I've been really doing this only for the last 4 years or so, but before that, I've had a lot of background in the field of both research psychology, as well as doing clinical psychology and consulting with the military. So I've been bouncing around a lot, and my main goal is to work with people and helping them kind of up-level their game, basically.
Great. So when you guys fall in love with Jeff after this conversation, like I have, I'm going to put a link to his contact information in the comments so you can get in touch with Jeff. So Jeff, do me a favor, tell me about what happened that started this conversation between you and I.
Yes, actually last year, I live here in San Francisco, and I live across from this wonderful park, and I decided to go out for a walk, and I got caught in the middle of a gang violence where I got shot.
Jeez.
And I got shot. I was actually one of 3 people who were kind of injured. I was probably the least impacted, but I got shot through the leg, and that set in motion a whole cascade of issues and things that came through that. Yeah.
So what was your injury, and like what was your convalescence like? How did that impact your physical and emotional life?
Well, that's a big story. Actually, it almost goes in phases because there was the immediacy of the actual event of being shot. And as I said, I was fortunate because the gunshot went right through my leg. So I was on this bridge crossing over, the metro, and there was about a hail of a bunch of gunshot fires going off there, and I realized I had to take care of myself because nobody was coming to my rescue there, and I literally had to kind of get out of the line of fire. And at the same time, I had to have presence. And I think if there's anything I'm going to share with you today in this conversation, was that there was something about an abiding presence I was able to tap into to really connect with myself and get very clear what I had to do. And it was actually instantaneous, in part because I do a lot of practice. I do meditation a lot. I've trained people in meditation. I've studied with all the teachers. So I had something to go to. And I think it made the difference, both in the immediate response to the situation, because literally I had to pull myself out of the line of fire. I had to begin to kind of put pressure on the wound. I had no idea whether it was bleeding out or not. I had the wherewithal at that time still, there's something kind of kicked in to be very awake to what was going on. And it was almost like I didn't have time to think about anything. It was more like one thing after the other, you just do it. And it was that kind of attunement to just being present to that probably made the changes that took place for me. Because one, I had to take care of my possessions there. The only thing I lost in the process was I lost 1 shoe and my keys. Because when the ER came, when the medical staff came and the police came and everything, and the helicopters are overhead and all this commotion, I was in excruciating pain. It was just no doubt about it. And so from that moment of just being in that, it was not so much trying to, oh, woe is me. I had no thought about what was going on other than what do I do right now? And it was almost like a clearing that took place. And so the first phase of this thing was more just coping with the immediate situation, taking care of one thing after another, and being very clear what those steps should be. And that included how I self-regulated to manage my pain as they moved me from, the park to the hospital, things like that, until I got into the ER. And what made this more challenging, just to kind of add on how overwhelming this could have been, when they actually took an X-ray of, not an X-ray, it was actually a CAT scan to make sure the bullet wasn't still in my body, they discovered something independent of this that was actually another challenge to me. They said they discovered this kind of mass near my spleen. They said that, gee, that basically, you have this pseudoaneurysm that's been calcified, but if you're not careful, because when they discharge me, make sure you don't fall. So what do you mean? Well, if you fall the wrong way, that thing will burst open, you'll just bleed out, we can't do anything for you. So I had this double whammy of like almost managing not to get killed from the gunshot thing, only to be told that at any moment I could die anyway. Interesting kind of message when you realize that's true for us regardless, right? But it was really right there. And the third factor to make this whole, event so totally overwhelming, maybe, was that prior to me being shot, I was planning to leave the following day or a couple of days afterwards to go to New York City because my mom was dying. And I needed to be there to kind of help her in her transition. And all of a sudden now I can't go because of all this is going on here. So there was this overriding kind of like, I need to get to mom. So those three things all operate at once. And so that's what happened. I would say to you, the most important thing was that something about the idea of being awake, being able to be calm in some ways, to be present, carry the day through everything. In fact, the social workers at the ER even wrote me a testimonial because they said, wow, we've never met somebody under these circumstances who could be so kind of like together despite everything that was going on.
Right. So total plug for meditation and practice, which I love, because one of the reasons I'm doing this beautiful constraint conversation is because my focus is on people who are in their 40s and 50s and resiliency. And resiliency for me starts with practice before you get into a situation that throws you off your game. So I love that your practice brought you through that. Question I have for you is, often for me, I can have a presence and then my human self is still going off over here. So I'm curious, what were your emotions like? What were your thoughts like immediately after when you went home and you were alone with the challenge of all this and the overwhelm of not being able to get to your mother? Even though you were centered and grounded, what was going on?
That was kind of a fascinating process. First of all, the drugs they gave me just to kind of tone down the pain did help a little bit the first few days. But I think the first thing was catching those self-incriminating kind of judgments about how could I have really gotten in the middle of this? Why wasn't I more present to be awake to what was going on in the first place? But what helped me was the awareness, and I do subscribe to the idea of understanding how much our sense of reality is very much determined by the thinking we engage in. And I realized as much as these thoughts will run through me anyway, I don't have to indulge them. So I was catching myself in these things and constantly tracking how, even though thoughts are coming up that might be, negative like that, I wasn't going to give it much more due other than I acknowledged it was there.
Okay.
And then there was a return to coming back, because in this midst of this whole healing process, it became one large meditation, actually. It was like a moment. It wasn't even day to day. It was like hour to hour. I was constantly coming back to, can I just stay settled? Because there was still a lot of pain for a while.
Sure. So let me make it so that, because I understand your process, I get what you're saying. I want to slow it down for people.
Sure.
So you had a choice and a decision at every moment. Do I go into the pain and the despair? Do I believe my thoughts, or do I look forward? What was the decision or the choice to help you move forward instead of kind of wallow?
One was an understanding about what I said about the thinking. I understood, at least in the background, that thought would have a big deal about how I could actually have an experience, and I didn't have to indulge that thinking if I saw that. Just to recognize that first. Say that last part again about what else, because there's another thought there I just lost.
So I'm curious, because you do it so naturally. So when I realized that I was going to be in crutches and things were going to be really tough, the initial was like, this is really tough. But because, like you, I've had a practice, and I made a decision. Actually, I was going to use this book. I was reading this book for business, and I decided I'm going to use this book and figure out how can I make this better. So I made a conscious choice. You do it automatically. Most people don't have those tools. So the people who are watching this, I want to talk to the people who are not adept at that, to say, oh my God, I'm feeling sorry for myself. How do I make the choice, the decision to now move into making this a practice, making this a meditation, making this something better for myself?
Well, first of all, you decide you're going to do that. It's sort of like a commitment you make to yourself. And there's something about the quality of what commitment really can be. But I have to say the main thing, you just mentioned it before, let's slow it down. It really was an issue of keep remembering to slow things down. Even in the healing process where there's an impatience, where you feel, I want to get on with things, I want to do things. And for me, the big thing was not only to, even in taking care of my wound changes, you know, and having to kind of redress the wounds like that, was not, because I'm squirmish, I don't like this kind of stuff. But nevertheless, you know, just kind of just slow it down and do one little thing at a time, then the next thing. So there was a lot of issues around observation, about really just watching what really is happening. So I was aware that this would help me, but I made that choice. The other thing was there's an awareness because of meditation practices that I knew that the sequence of a trauma like this could be devastating if I begin to overindulge it in certain ways, because that's what PTSD will happen with PTSD. And
you were aware enough to kind of real time deal with what could have.
I knew the possibility that could happen if I'm not careful. And I mean by not careful was that I didn't indulge it or get wrapped up into the reactivity from that experience. And I've worked with other people with PTSD. I've worked with the military. I've worked with other things in clinical practice at times. So there was some, at least, familiarity of the possibilities. So, I mean, I'm saying, so in a way, being schooled that way, that awareness served me to remind me, okay, I can do something different. And the big thing, and I'll keep leaning on this presence idea, but it helped me at every step of the way. And that was whatever came up as a discomfort, whatever came up as a challenge or an emotional jag or whatever it is, the first thing I remember was open myself up. Do not hold on to this. Imagine, if you will, you're like a conduit, and you know, and that's kind of flexible. And when you are challenged, there might be a reaction where you'll kind of squeeze down on yourself, and therefore the energy that can move through you will be limited. Well, it's almost like, imagine, if you will, when you first go outside and it's -degree weather, and the first reaction of the body is to brace. And yet that doesn't help warm the body up.
Right.
What helps warming the body up is to, despite that discomfort, can I stay open and allow it to move through me? It's that concept we're talking about here, because the sequela of trauma will kind of almost plant itself or lodge itself into you unless you keep open up to allowing the energy to keep moving. So it's that understanding to stay open and allow it to move through you that really, I think, made the difference. And knock on wood, I never experienced PTSD.
So question. So your mother not being able to get to your mother seemed to be a bigger deal in your process.
Yes, and that's a good point, because that was another thing. I had a bigger intention about what I had to do, and there was no compromise in that. By hook or by crook, I had to get to mom.
Right.
And so to me, it was an issue of clearing out everything possible in terms of the issues that were getting in the way. And what I'm trying to say about this commitment idea, it wasn't like, oh, I got to do this thing, oh my God, or any drama. It was very even keeled. It was almost like there was a state of calm running through the whole thing, and which is like uncanny in a way, but yet it was very deliberate. And and I think I began to realize something, that this is the nature of commitment. When you are in commitment, there's no drama in this thing. You just go about business. You just do it. And it's already done, actually. I knew I was going to be there no matter what. So there was this kind of quality there. But let me back up a little bit, because the healing process, we're talking about this mending. I had to figure out how to walk again. I couldn't walk. And I'm a dedicated walker. So what I began to do is, and they were telling me, you better walk sooner rather than later, or you're going to have atrophy in the muscles and things like that. Well, I started walking. I was very diligent about really getting myself in gear. And then I realized I'm creating pains in places I didn't have before. And so I realized the pressure to get on with it, to move quickly through the healing process, was actually counterproductive in what I needed. And then I discovered
Thank you for confronting me, because I just got yelled at by my doctor from trying to move too quickly. And
well, maybe this is a big learning for myself, a reminder, and maybe for all of us. I had to slow myself down and really study, how was I trying to walk? Because you can walk, and the doctor says, yeah, walk, just get a number of steps in per day, da-da-da-da. But there's a way in which you do it that'll be more healing or helpful to you. Because what was happening to me was I was pushing the envelope too quickly. It was creating other pains after a while, but I was creating an imbalance. I was trying to overstep myself. So now I'm creating a disproportionate kind of focus on one side of my body versus the other to compensate. So again, I had to slow down and say, okay, let me feel exactly what I'm doing. And let the body show me, how can I stay open even in this next step? So rather than taking lots of steps, I slowed it down to almost like there was a meditation. One step, make sure the step was right, take another step. So I slowed it way down. The end result was I healed faster. I was actually able to walk more imbalanced than before even.
I will take that advice. So thank you. So without even me asking any questions, you talked about the things that I wanted to talk about: mindset. How do you make these decisions, and how do you stay present through this to learn? So now you start to walk again. You got to your mom and she transitioned, and let's say 6 months later, where were you in this process?
It was more like almost 9 months, because literally
it's been a year, right?
It's been August 3rd is when I got shot. And
it's not even a year.
Not even a year. And then I couldn't get to my mom. I was delayed by almost 6 weeks. By the time I got to her, she was already in hospice care. And that was a big challenge, because I had to now deal with a lot of other commotion to settle things down, to make sure there was a calming space for my mom. And I think being shot and then also confronted with the possibility that at any moment I could die because of the spleen thing, it heightened a certain kind of awareness in me. I was very acutely aware of every little thing. There was an appreciation of the given moment, and I'm feeling comfortable with that, being in the moment from moment to moment. And I had some of the most amazing conversations with my mom, because one of the big things that came out, I'll share this because it was really poignant for me. She was ready to go. And she kept on saying, I'm so glad you're here now. So tell me, where is the button I have to push to leave? And I said, button? What button? And so she just wanted, because she's done. She's finished. I want to get out of here. I said, well, Mom, there's no button. But if there's a button here, then I'll share with you what's going on with me. It comes about how to be totally present now and how to celebrate this moment now. And we began to work that way. We began to work, and she began to relax herself. And I promised her, I made the commitment to her, I will be with you right to the end, which I was able to accomplish, which actually was his own kind of triumph in a sense, because I was able to kind of accompany her all the way. And that made a big difference for me as well. But it was this notion of like slowing things down again and savoring the moment and celebrating it. Because that's all there is now, is this now. So I began to really tune into this thing real big time. One other thing that probably helped this whole process, and then I'll answer your question about where I am from now, from then to now.
Yeah, because I forgot. I wanted to go to the halfway point, but you're still kind of.
Well, I'm tracking it a little bit there. But there was another thing. While I was convalescing there in the beginning, I couldn't even really focus anything about a lengthy reading thing. I was more into watching some YouTube stuff. And there was a retreat that was being done on Hawaii with Ram Dass. Do you know who Ram Dass is?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, Ram Dass is great. Anyway, he has this lovely mantra that he kind of conveys to people that I will dip into and work with at times. And it's simply, I am loving awareness. And if you break it down, it's amazing. It's about, I'm loving awareness. I am loving awareness. It's this thing about loving this moment now, fully, totally open to it. And it was transformative, especially when I had the chance to be with my mom that way. So this kind of thing set the occasion, allow me to slow things down to one step at a time. And yet through it all, there was a real clear sense of deliberation about taking steps. So when my mom transitioned, I had other challenges too, because my family wanted to then close down the only house I ever grew up in, 70 years. And I had to then move all my stuff out and deal with that. Well, all that move ahead to now, Okay. Because I finally resolved all that stuff. I kept on having to push and work on these things, and a lot of physical things despite my wound, and really working my body. I got into better shape as a result from all the packing and schlepping and things like that. But what happened was I just decided deliberately not to do anything other than stay to deal with these immediate tasks at hand. And I really had to restart my business up again, because that means 9 months I'm not creating new clients. I'm not serving anybody. It's sort of like I had a few conversations here and there, but outside of that, it wasn't a deliberate plan. And so I actually made a new plan. I actually began to sketch out, okay, come this time, will be another milestone, I'll do this. I made a timeline for a new project in my life. And that involved enrolling with another group of coaches to hang with and work with, working with Steve Chandler, for instance. And so that was my reigniting my life in a way, as far as claiming it back. And so now I'm back on schedule. And in a very short period of time now, I've got a practice growing pretty well, and I'm beginning to make the money happen. And so it was more like having that bigger intention in mind and having a plan for it.
Got it. So tell me, so now that, had this not happened, you would have been in a certain place. Because this happened, what do you think is different in your life? How has it pushed you forward in what areas that you didn't have before?
It's more about honoring what I thought I was doing and making it real. In other words, I thought I was on a trajectory already of incorporating things, but it brought home on such a profound level the idea of being really awake, being really present, and working with my body more. I mean, I teach that with other people, but now I had to own it. I had to really take responsibility.
So back to Ram Dass. One of the stories I love about Ram Dass, when he had his stroke, he was always comforting people who were dying or had people dying, and he's talking about, oh, it's nothing, it's just a transition and all this stuff. And then when he had his stroke, he was shocked and saddened and surprised to find out he didn't want to die, and he was scared. And he said that changed his ministry to the elderly, to people who lost people, changed everything. He was real. And I love his humility that he talked about that and actually shifted. So for you, it actually deepened your...
even to the point in the midst of all the initial trauma, there's also the idea of community and how people come. And in this case, because of a shooting, it wasn't like a typical response of kind of giving you, people were freaked out. And so here I am convalescing, and people coming to me, and rather than, of course they cared, but they were so wrapped up in their own fear and their own reactivity. I was comforting them. I had enough, because I felt grounded and comfortable enough that I didn't need to be reassured, or I felt so grounded already that I was paying attention to what was coming to me from people around me and trying to help them manage their reactivity. And that was like, oh, wow, I can't believe this. Here it is. I'm the one who's the focus of something here of concern, and yet they had their concerns too. They had their debilitations and their secondary trauma. And was being able to be awake to that, to tend to that. So that was an interesting thing, but I don't think I would have been so tuned in had I not been grounded in myself. So it goes on and on and on that way, you see.
So now for your coaching practice, you're just deeper times several levels.
I think it applies to almost everything I'm doing. It was showing up before, but now I'm embracing that. It's my go-to place to be. In other words, as I start a session, I first make sure that I'm attuned with my body. I'm feeling that. And I'm trusting more and more. There's the inherent wisdom that will come through once I quiet myself down and trust that. So more and more it's changing now, is less having an agenda and more about being present to what wants to show up, and then helping you kind of bring that out so we see what the next step is.
I love that. It's interesting that you say that. Since my surgery, I have decided to double, and I've doubled my meditation and my writing time every morning, which on one hand, it's like it takes me an hour to just shower and get dressed. But I've doubled it, and what's happening in my coaching, what's happening in my presence, what's happening in everything that I'm doing is so different by doubling that time going inside. So that's a gift that I'm going. I said I have it on my whiteboard over here. I said I want to deepen my spiritual practice. Sit on the anthill. Doubling that has changed everything.
I think practice is very important. I mean, we talk about spontaneity and things, and it doesn't mean that because you meditate, you're good at meditation or not. But it creates the possibility. It potentiates the field in a sense. At least you might be more alert to a moment such as what I went through, where all of a sudden you just dive in. So I think there's something about a grounding in the practice. Everybody should have some kind of practice. I don't care what it is.
Thank you. So I like this because it just reminds me of all my clients. I teach my clients to breathe. I teach my clients to feel their fingers and toes and be present. And invariably 6 months later they'll walk in and they'll say, "Oh my God, my boss just hammered me, and I just stood there and I was present and I was with." And I'm like, this stuff works. Like, I think I'm a little woo-woo, a little crazy, and I'm talking to executives. This stuff works. You can be your best even with a gunshot. I love that. Now, when I was in the hospital last year with my appendix burst, I was screaming obscenities and yelling and crying like a baby. And I wish I was like you were after you got shot. I'm embarrassed, but maybe next time.
But I've been there also. I mean, it's a progression. We are evolving and developing, so practice is important. And there was a point I was going to make there. It just slipped my mind now. But there's something so salient about this kind of idea of being in your body. And most people aren't in their bodies. They basically will only react to something when they feel disturbance in their body. But what if I could really occupy my body more fully? Actually, it opens a gateway to so much more information and appreciations of things and pleasure, whatever else it is. We're so still caught up in our heads. Even us coaches, we talk too much sometimes. Right. And I think sometimes really remembering to connect it back to our body as we engage. And these could be actually what I wanted to share with you or extend what you're saying. It's not just sitting on the cushion that counts. How do I bring the sense of what I was experiencing on the cushion into each moment as I'm walking? You see, every step I take is a meditation if I wake up to it. Every food I take in my mouth, every morsel can be a meditation. Any moment, and it doesn't have to interfere with whatever I'm doing. I can do anything I want to be doing and still be present to my body at the same time. And if I can even a little bit shift that, just a wee bit, it radically changes a lot of other things.
Oh, thank you. So I could talk to you for hours, and I'm trying to keep this to this particular subject, but I could go on and on with you. Thank you for this. Is there anything, so the people that I want to watch this and I want to get something out of it are people who have hit the wall, have hit something and come out the other side. Do you have one last thing that you want to share with people who may be going through something and find that going tough?
Number one, everything changes. So the first thing is, it's not going to stay forever that way. No, I don't care what it is. It's not going to stay forever. Just not built in that way. Two, remember to slow down. Stop if you have to first. Just stop and recognize what is in front of you now. Breathing, as you said, some other things. I used to do research and meditation practice, and all these things have physiological shifts that take place in our body that can support us. So this science, it's not woo-woo, it's science. So always just stop and just kind of just feel what is without judgment and keep practicing that way and stay open. If you could just kind of imagine yourself staying open to allow whatever you are feeling to move through you, it won't stick. You'll be like Teflon that way. And this way, you're free.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for taking this time for the conversation. Thank you, everybody, for staying with us through the end. There was so much wisdom in this conversation. I hope you gleaned from it. Keep me posted if you had a similar experience, not getting shot maybe, but you hit a wall and you came through it and you have some gold to share. Let me know so that we can share it with other people. I will keep the chronicalization of my recovery. and a beautiful constraint. And I will also put Jeff's contact information in the comments so that if you are as fascinated with him as I am, you can get in touch with him. Thank you, everybody. I love you, and take care.
Thank you.